I'm Georgina Hall, and this is the Phemale Empowered podcast, inspired by the casual conversations I've had with thousands of women over my career in coaching. This is not just another wanky women's wellness podcast. We are bringing the uprising.
Hi friends, welcome to the Phemale Empowered podcast. I am your host, Georgina Hall, personal trainer, online coach, and offerer of opinions on all things. Somebody who shares this approach, I believe. So my guest today is Danni Tabor. Hello, Danni.
Hello. Hi.
Offering opinions on all things too, don't you?
Absolutely. Sometimes too much opinion.
Yeah, more often than not, too many opinions.
Yeah. It's the only way I know how.
Me too. I think it's for the best though. You just got to put what you've got into the world, haven't you?
Yes.
See what bounces back.
You know, I actually am very lucky though in my Instagram space. Like I think most of like the community that they relate and are like on board. So I generally don't get anyone that's like, no, your opinions are rubbish.
You tend to get a little echo chamber, don't you? This tends to be what you create.
Yeah.
And it's not that often that I get I mean, you have a much bigger following than I do, but it's not that often that I get somebody giving me grief. The other day I posted something on Earth Day about how, you know, as a nutritionist, which is what I do for a living, I posted about how you could make your diet more environmentally friendly.
Yeah, you was talking about eating less meat and you were saying you're not vegan, but you do eat less meat.
Exactly, yeah, just ways to help people make a difference, improve their carbon footprint. And some guy came on my Facebook post that was like, the real issue here is there are too many human beings and we need to stop breeding, and people are worried about this and they should be worried about that, and there's too much virtue signaling. And I was like, virtue signaling? I said, hun, first of all, I'm gay, so there's no breeding happening here.
Yeah.
And also, if you want a post on human population, write your own. This is about diet from a nutritionist.
This is what I am talking about. It really does baffle me though, like why people think that they can come on and be like, no, this is what you should have said. But it's like, but if I wanted to say that, I would have said that.
Yeah, you can
cells.
say what you want
To your following. Honestly, people, yeah. Huh.
Anyway, going back to your very special introduction, let's discuss you a little bit more and your Instagram space and what you do, what it's there for.
So I'm a wellbeing coach is how I describe myself. So like I came from the fitness, PT aspect. And then as I kind of worked much more online, I realized how much it wasn't really about the fitness and it was a much more about the mindset and body image and diet culture, and kind of trying to unlearn all the things that diet culture has taught us. And I feel like in my space on Insta, I've always been very good at talking about my version of my well-being, whatever that is at the time. So when I was doing a fitness competition, I still talked about my mindset and my body image and stuff like that. But I suppose my messaging has just gone slightly more, I don't know if it's gone slightly more niche or slightly more wider in the aspect of much more encouraging people to just really focus on how they want to feel, more so than how they want to look, but not taking away that goal that people do have, but just sort of maybe encouraging people to just go about it in a slightly different way, much more process-based than goal-based.
Yeah, it seems like you are kind of in the middle ground where I like to sit as well, where we go, listen, you can have aesthetic goals, but let's be aware of this mental and spiritual aspect of that as well. Because I think some people, they're finding nowadays with the anti-diet movement that they don't even want to tell you that they want to lose weight or they want to make changes.
Oh yeah, I get that a lot. And I think people are starting to feel like they're shamed into feel that, that they feel shame in wanting to change their body, I guess. And my thing is, it's like, we can absolutely look at changing your body. And if that ends up being what you really do want to do, then let's go about it in a way that just does not, you don't lose your soul doing so. And you don't, sacrifice a life that you actually really like. But I just feel like the fitness industry, the mainstream fitness industry, and even how I was potentially taught, I don't know, 7 years ago, doesn't encourage particular questions that make you go, why do you potentially want to change your body? And are you really, does the lifestyle you want to live like align with that body? Because I think most of the time, actually not most of the time, every time, the body the client wants versus the lifestyle they want are not the same. And I feel like my job is to kind of switch that up a bit, close the gap a little bit on that. So like, what if we change your lifestyle here and you still loved it, but it does still encourage the goals that you want to hear, but maybe not here? It's like just trying to help them find their middle ground, because there is so much context to fat loss. And okay, I know it's just a calorie effing deficit, but there's just way more gray area. If it was that simple, like, we all know vegetables are great and we all know protein, yay, we all know that we should be active. But putting that, like, I know it's great for me to be productive and to like wash every day, but sometimes that's a struggle. And that's about mindset and habit, building up habits more so than whether I know a wash is good for me or not.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What that reminds me, one of our guests in the middle of the pandemic, he was a cardiorespiratory physiotherapist. So she's on the front line for COVID, and she was telling us a story about how her friend hadn't changed their knickers for 3 days. And I was like, that's actually a really good comparison to exercise. Like, we don't have to exercise. We don't have to change our knickers.
Right.
But it's probably best that we do.
I mean, it's definitely best that I do. Like, but then there are times, and there are times that you might not, right? And it's a bit the same.
Yeah.
There'll be times where you don't exercise. I always use the one of brushing my teeth, because for me, like, brushing my teeth is a chore. Like, despite both me and my husband are awful, because like both of us don't really enjoy showering or enjoy brushing our teeth. It's just like, oh, we've got to do it. So we will avoid often. So we have to like really focus on, like, this is the habit. What's the habit for? Why is it a habit? Well, I don't want my teeth to fall out, right? Like, I don't want my gums to be all full and my teeth to fall out. So you do make it a habit. You have, and I think that a lot of the time, again, mainstream fitness and diet culture have encouraged exercise for X reason, or eating this much for X reason, and it's always got to do with your size. Whereas I really try and focus on, like, I talk about nourishing yourself and your well-being, which, look, eating protein for me, okay, great. When I was building a bum, the protein helps with that. But essentially, there's so many more other things that it's beneficial for before we even get to the muscle building. So like, I'm fuller for longer, like, I'm satiated. It's good for my tendons, my ligaments, my bones. Your organs are muscles. Like, my mum got really sick a couple years ago, and so she was on real heavy chemo. And this was a massive like aha moment for me. Like, I was still very much into training for aesthetics. I wasn't ashamed of that. Like, I wanted broader shoulders and bigger bum. And so I was very much on my protein game. And then I just had this thought that if my mum had been eating a decent amount of protein and resistance training, let's say as a foundation for, the years prior to this, she, without a doubt, I think she would have been able to handle chemo a lot better than she could, because it makes you frail and it takes the life out of you. And for me, that was a big wake up call to be like, I don't just eat protein to build my bum. Like, I want to be in my bestest, strongest self. And protein helps with that.
Yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
it's part of that word nourishing that you use as well, isn't it? Like, you know, just people think of nourishing like tied in with self-care, and self-care is baths and candles and all of that. No, hun, self-care is also eating your protein, being hydrated, getting outside, going for walks, moving your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy that I spent years never putting that stuff at the forefront. I mean, I would have rather have been skinny and lean and unhealthy and unnourished, truthfully. Like, I didn't give a shit that I spent most of my 20s, you know, well, half binging, half restricting, and which meant for half the time I was definitely not nourished at all. And I didn't care. Like, and I only now in retrospect can I look back and I think if someone had asked me the right questions and just challenged me slightly. My mum did ask me something. I was deep into a 5-2 diet. I was about to go to Vegas for my 30th. So I hadn't started PTing just yet, but I'd done the course. And I remember trying on bikini and I just cried because I didn't look how I thought I should look at the end of this 5-2 diet. And my mum said, like, what if you could be, which is a bit like your blue pill, red pill thing. But she was like, what if you could be happy, but bigger? Or would you rather be smaller and sadder? And I was like, you just don't get it, Mum. I would never be happy if I was bigger. Like, what a stupid, I can't even. And, you know, like, I think a year later was when I was like clickety click, like during that year. And now I'm like, God, I would always rather this where I'm at now, bigger, happier. But it took a lot of like figuring out what were the things that then did make me happy.
Yeah.
Like being accountable for my choices, feeling nourished. Like, I didn't realize how much eating satisfying, satiating food made me happy. So I thought it was being lean, but actually it was kind of nothing to do with the size, but actually maybe what I was choosing to eat, and then feeling empowered by that choice as well. And understanding food. I don't know how you feel. Like, for me, when I learned about nutrition and I started tracking in a way that wasn't to restrict, but to make sure I was getting enough of things, like, the knowledge of that, like, really helped me with my disordered eating. I know for some, tracking can be opposite, but for me, it really helped find food freedom.
Yeah, same actually. My background's a little different because I was a competitive boxer. So I should have been eating for performance, but for a long time before I was educated, it was still to me about being lean.
Right.
And, you know, abs equated to being better at sport
Right.
even. And when I did my AFN course, my nutrition course, I was suddenly like, oh my God, like, I've been restricting so much. Now what happens if I actually eat what I'm required to perform? And that was a revelation. And yeah, likewise, that's what kind of gave me food freedom, because it would get to the end of the day when usually I was completely depleted and I had been tracking and was like, whoa, now look at all these carbs that I'm allowed to have now. And I'd be like, right, I'm having half a bag of squashies. Yes. And I remember this bodybuilder being like, you can't just eat squashies. And I was like, why can't I eat squashies? Yeah, I can. I've got 250 grams of carbs left, mate. And they were like, you need to be having white rice or potatoes. And I was like, no.
Actually, yeah. That kind of thing for me was such a liberation of like, it doesn't have to be rice, potato carbs, or even just all whole milk. It can be sweets. It can be, purely sugar or whatever, and that's absolutely fine. Like, that was mind blowing for me. Mine was when I was doing a fitness competition, and I was doing refeeds. I mean, if I was to do a fitness competition now, I wouldn't even implement the refeeds in this particular way, but I was basically like not having as many carbs in the week, and then on, a Saturday or Sunday, I'd do this big refeed. And I'd gotten to this point where I absolutely believed that bread, waffles, that kind of thing, like, would bloated me. Like, I was adamant that carbs in general just bloated me. And then I'd have these refeed days and be like so super lean the next day. I'd be like, oh, bread doesn't bloat me. Like, because I would eat all the starchy carbs and stuff. And I was like, whoa, that was just a belief I had that made me think this. How wild is that your thoughts can create? And that's what, for me, with like lots of my transformation pictures that I generally don't do now, but used to, would be like, I'd see my before picture now in the past, and I would remember how I felt on the day I took it. There's a particular picture. It was like, I did BBG many moons ago, which particular fitness thing, and I had my before picture, and I'd come back from LA where I had like come off the back of a 5-2 diet and then gone wild in LA for 3 months. Okay, obviously I gained some weight, so I obviously ate in a surplus, and I got back, and I just remember the day I stood there in these awful knickers and just cried and took this picture, and my eyes are all puffy. And now I look at that picture and I'm like, what's wrong with that? I look absolutely fine. Like, I look like how I look now, and that's not how I view myself now. But the power of your mind to like change how you look because of all the negative thoughts that I had around it all.
Yeah, that body image versus your actual body, like, chances are your body's not going to change that much, especially over the course of a month, but how much does your body image change over the course of that same month?
And I think that is key with working with clients. I would way rather a client work with me for 6 months on their body image and their body not change than their body changing over that 6 months, but they've not once worked on the body image stuff. And then they walk away a bit leaner, but still their mind is creating a vision back at them that isn't where they're happy or content. And I think that's a big deal.
And I think we are starting to get there. And I don't know, I was going to ask you this question. I don't know if, I guess all the anti-diet movement, body positivity movement is helping to change this. I think we're also moving away from the bodybuilder lifestyle, because certainly when I used to be in the gym all the time, when I started like 9 years ago, there was like probably the first 5 years of that, people who came to the gym thought, I've got to eat like a bodybuilder, I've got to train like a bodybuilder. And that's not realistic. That's not going to fit into a normal person's lifestyle. Only people, bodybuilders generally, who are getting paid, or they're trying to get a card or whatever it is, they find time to spend all their money and time and energy on training, diet, supplements, all of that.
It's your priority.
But I think maybe, and especially because social media is becoming a bigger thing the more that time's gone on, people kind of look at a bodybuilder, and it could be male, female, or a fitness model, and go, oh yeah, I want to look like that and have that lifestyle, because maybe people aren't so transparent about what goes on behind the scenes when they put out a picture of them looking super lean, but they're eating a pizza or they're eating a piece of cake. And I know, like, I've done this before. I've put on a picture where my abs are banging, but I'm eating a slice of cake. So, and people obviously think, oh, you eat cake, you eat pizza, you've got those abs. And I'm like, mate, I've trained 3 times a day for the last however many years. And I've completely moved away from that now. I'll put pictures out. You'll notice you don't see my abs anymore, but you do see a lot of cake.
How
much do you think?
I show my abs, but as in my belly, like my torso. I just, no one sees any abs.
They're covered now by a little extra cake and pizza, because there's a lot less training going on.
exactly. Yeah.
But a lot more living.
There's a lot more living. Do you know what? I find this bit, though, slightly hard for me because I really didn't feel like when I found fitness, I found a whole new world for me. Like, I'd given up acting, I'd gotten into PTing, and I like immersed myself. Like, I loved it, and it was a joy. And the fact that I made training a priority, and I'd found this way of like, I started to enjoy walking. I'd never enjoyed walking in my whole entire life. And then I was like listening to podcasts and getting in my steps, and it definitely had something to do with energy balance. I'm not saying it didn't, but so what I very much try, when I do share a picture of my old self, which I did recently, I very much try to like not give the rhetoric, which I think is general for people, like, when I was this lean, I was unhappy and I wasn't living a life, because I felt like, and I really was living a life, but I do try to make it clear on what that life I was living was.
Yeah.
And I think it just, like, if I get a client who I was working with someone last year, she was working from home, she had a lot more time on her hands. She actually had time to make nutrition and training a bit of a priority, more so than she'd had before when she was commuting and stuff like that. And so it's just about giving people the information to make informed decisions that, look, when you go back to work and you are commuting and you are going out and seeing friends again, this will take a step back, and therefore your body, stroke, energy balance, etc., it all may change. So let's try and focus on how you want to feel whilst doing it, and find the good in these changes for now, but let your mind be flexible enough to know that when the life changes again, you can be happy again there.
Yeah, it's an acceptance thing, isn't it? Because I certainly was never unhappy being lean. Like, I loved being in the gym all the time and feeling like a badass from training. But that lifestyle, that was my lifestyle. My lifestyle has very much changed, and a lot of that comes from getting older, I think. And I also think this kind of introspection comes from aging. And I have been feeling a bit older recently, Danni. I don't like to say like aging because it makes me feel like I'm like reaching the end of my days or something. But I was saying to my friend the other day, I sent her a picture from it came up my Facebook memories from 2 years ago, and I was like, look how young we look. I really feel like this year has aged me. Like, I've suddenly started getting lines that I didn't have before and things like that. But I'm really enjoying the shift in kind of mindset and calmness. Do you know what I mean? We talk about in the Zen and stuff, don't we, sometimes on our lives on a Wednesday night? And like, that's where I'm at in life now. Before, I was lean, had a six-pack, felt mint, but I was just a little fucking raj packet. Like, I had a lot of emotion going on that needed to get out.
And emotion that needed to be processed, and that I wasn't, and I thought because I'd had like a life change, and even like I think I must have been about 26 when I read like Eckhart Tolle, so I think I thought that I was like, oh, I've done my like stuff, and then there's more stuff to do. There's always more stuff to do.
Always.
But absolutely. And what I was saying, I think last week in the live, is that Zen feeling for me, like I would call it that contentment, that like acceptance of, because as much as, I really enjoyed being lean, but I enjoyed, this is the thing, I enjoyed identifying with, I'm a fitness person now. Like I'm so glad that I embraced it the way I did. But I'm also so glad that there's been this acceptance of like nutrition, my body image, the lifestyle that I choose. And that still comes with having to make conscious choices. Like, I think I always say to clients, like, don't think I'm just eating 100 grams of protein like that. Like, I'm conscious about it. So like, because I am conscious about, and I'm the same way I'm conscious about, I better brush my teeth now. So being accepting and zen and content doesn't mean that you're not consciously making choices. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people think it just means being a bit airy-fairy and just letting life take you as it is. I don't think I agree with that. I think it's a bit about being mindful, right? We talk
Yeah.
about being mindful a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely not as easy as people think.
Yeah, no, it's not just like, and switch. Oh,
Yeah. I've just reached that level now. Don't have to think or try.
yeah, like I am Buddha.
I wish. I wish. Danni, we touched a little bit in one of our lives last week about privilege, and especially in the fitness industry. And I actually saw what I think was a great post from Ben Carpenter yesterday. And it was kind of along these lines of, yeah, here I am with my fitness body and looking great, but yeah, I do get to spend more time in the gym, and it's something that I really enjoy. So if you don't like training, it's obviously going to be much harder for you to achieve because it's more of a chew on. And I was like, I was like, this post isn't just about privilege in fitness and about how, you know, fitness professionals get to spend more time in the gym, so and they enjoy it more, so and they might find it easier. But it's also a good kind of reflection of privilege within society on a whole, which we have talked about before.
Oh, yeah. Because I don't think I used to consider when I first got into fitness, say, the cost of protein as an example. Like, you have to be in quite a privileged position in terms of that you're earning a decent amount, that you've got disposable income, one, to have a personal trainer, but two, to even eat in a particular way. And I'm so much very aware, especially now I've moved from fitness to well-being coaching, that your choices aren't always based on just choices. Like, it's where you maybe sit socioeconomically and stuff like that. And I think we have to be really careful about just saying things out there on Instagram like, if you want to live a well life, you need to have, 0.7 grams of protein per pound of weight that you are at a minimum, because some people cannot afford that. So there's like, I do think that as a PT, like, you kind of, one, you do come from this particular place of the client that can afford it, because you're there, that's your job, and then you're working with somebody that does have some sort of privilege. But I think
you kind of going as well, like, you're not taking anything away from your own value. Like, you know that you offer value to people's lives, and there's nothing being taken away from that. You do offer things, but still, it's a luxury to people when they're dealing with their financial outgoings.
Absolutely. And, I've just opened this gym with my friend in Clapham, and we've had to really think about it because we wanted to make it more accessible. So it's small group personal training, so that, it's not 70 to 100 pounds an hour, which as a PT you can charge in London, and to make it, it's 17 to 28 pounds a session. That still prices people out. And I think so. That's why I love Instagram. There's lots I don't like about it, but there's lots I do like about it because it is free information. I saw a post though today that made a point, which was like, the fitness industry is not regulated. And that's an issue. If it was, it would be so much better to be able to make sure that there was regulated information so people knew what they were getting was safe, but it's not. So yeah, I think there is a lot of privilege, even just in the terms of who the fitness industry is run by, yet who the biggest market it's for. Obviously, I know that diet culture and fitness will grab men by the balls as well and be like, shake up their body image too. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's obviously very much marketed at women. And that, from a male's perspective, I think a lot of the time.
I agree. And I am going to put my feet up because I'm ready to go in on this with you.
Yes.
This is a safe space, Danni. We can We can say what we want. It's all coming from a place of kindness and with an openness to learn, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But we have discussed on this podcast before the possibility of reverse sexism, which we decided isn't a thing. And that came from a certain fitness professional who is cis, white, heterosexual male.
Yes.
And that is, well, I mean, they're running society, aren't they? They're not just running fitness on Instagram, they're running society. And one thing I would like to put to you, because I was just thinking about this morning, how much of that is what I am going to term, and this is my term, it's the first time that I've ever said it, I'm going to call it the boy band effect, where men are jealous of them, so men kind of want to be them, and the women fancy them. So how much of the power that they hold is because of that dynamic? Because the women, and I'm talking about kind of cis straight women here, want an acceptance, or want to feel validated or whatever. So they kind of monopolize the market because they've got both elements going on. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not sure that was very eloquent there, because I was just...
Let me see. Let me ask. Hold on. So men who manipulate the scenario, right? The fitness industry, the system, the world. But in terms of, they are the boy band, and men want to be them, and then women want to be validated by them. So they get to run this market and reach and manipulate everybody. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying right there.
I like it. I think absolutely. And I don't think it's an accident either. I think that that's been curated very well, and they know how to, but they know how to to come and manipulate in all different dynamics. So whether it be the way slimming groups are ran, or the way magazines are put together, or the way then social media has worked. I think that it's definitely a thing. And that's why I think as women, not as women, as not male, so anybody that potentially isn't this like white, cisgender, able-bodied male that's like got the top seat at the freaking table and is the one being like, yes, no, yes.
If you're normal.
So if you're anyone other than that, I think it's about trying to take that power back and say, I want to do what I want to do for me and stuff. But unfortunately, it's so difficult. I would have said I never wanted to be lean for men. I would have said I wanted to be lean because I wanted to impress other girls, in the sense of, like, a lot of my stuff, like I had to stop following a lot of fashion stuff because the fashion bloggers are always a very particular look, and it's so triggering for me. And I just restarted following some, and I was like, oh, no, that trigger's still there. Like, so for me, it was a lot about fashion and wanting women, like, but where does that come from? Like, that's patriarchy too, no?
It is patriarchy, but what about representation? So we are looking for people in media, on social media, in books, in films, on the TV, that represent us, so that we can go, oh yeah, that's us, I can relate to them. So what about representation, people of color, queer people? That's what we are looking for, and we don't get shown a lot of it. And you touched on that the other day as well, when you were talking about your explore page and what comes up.
Yeah. Like, so just to give you some background, so I'm just making sure I charge my phone. When Black Lives Matter kicked off again last year after George Floyd, everyone was doing a lot of work and, trying to learn. Well, not everyone was. Some of us were, like, I was trying. And so I started trying to get like more diversity on my feed. So I started following more activists, more people of color, but also a couple of years ago, I'd started following, people in different size bodies, trans people, etc., etc. I tried to just have some diversity because my feed was fitness at the time. And my explore feed has never changed. It still kept giving randomly. I've never been into keto, but most of my explore feed is keto transformations and like white fitness influencers. Absolutely. So nothing changed. Now, interestingly enough, recently I got pregnant and I started like following more pregnant people, like mum things, pregnancy things, blah, blah, blah. My whole explore feed is pregnancy stuff now. Like, I screenshotted it and shared it on my Instagram. 4 scrolls was all pregnancy stuff with a few fitness stuff thrown in. And every single dot person in the square was white. And I just found it interesting that when I start looking for pregnant people, my explore feeds reflects that, albeit white people, despite the fact that I went on a whole looking for mums, people of color, because I asked people specifically, you're all recommending everyone's white. Does anybody have any like black mummy bloggers? Like, this is insane. So I went on a spree and found loads of people that people had sent me. My explore feed still didn't represent that. Why, when I started looking at like following trans people, fat people, black people over the last couple of years, has my explore feed not changed? Yet when I look for a pregnant woman, you give me 20 million white pregnant women. So something is up there, and it's definitely got something to do. And I'm not saying it's all conscious like this. People are like, patriarchy, you don't even know what this is. Da, 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 da. It's like, I don't know if there's like this big old white guy sitting at the top of like the Instagram, director's table saying, make sure that the algorithm only recognizes white faces and you put them to the top. I don't know if that's really a logical thing, but I do think that if it's not that blatant, it's definitely unconscious bias making that coding system happen, because that's ridiculous. I don't get how that happens unless there is some sort of system that is based out of human minds. It's not just all robotic. Like, the algorithm is based on humans creating that code. So that for me is like, there isn't enough representation. There wasn't when I grew up. And like you say, and that's part of it as well. The representation, because, sorry, but I feel like it's whiteness, right? Like success, we are pushed white thinness. Like someone said to me, because I started talking a lot about fat phobia and how that's linked with racism, and someone was like, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, recommended a book that they should read. But like a lot, when you think about
the book, Danni.
No, I can't remember. I knew you were going to ask. I can't
remember. Oh, you'll have
to
let me know after, and I'll put it in the show notes.
I will. Fearing the Black Body, I'm sure it's called. And when we think about this idolized body, whatever era it's been, it's always a white body. And even people will say now, but less so now, because we're talking about the boobs and the curves and the small waist and the bum. No, that was white people, what's the word, appropriating a black body, and now it's acceptable. Now this generalized black, like idolized body, the boob, small waist, bum, now it's acceptable because the likes of the Kardashians made it acceptable. So it's always whiteness and body image and the representation that we're thrown. It's always whiteness. But when it does become okay and acceptable to have more Black features or Black, when there is more Black representation, it's still the white big boys at the top of the record label that will make that. So,
Yeah. Interesting. It's systemic, isn't it? And social media is like a microcosm of society. But that doesn't explain why you wouldn't get more of what you search for on your explore feed, does it? I showed you though, my explore feed is all drag queens, Dan Levy, and plants. And because there's so many drag queens, I actually have quite a lot of people of color on it. Because, and I've just been talking about this, and again, this is me wading into water that is, I have no idea what's in it. But if anyone can teach me, I'm open and happy to learn. Yeah. The proportion of Black drag queens seems to be high, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to know like where that history comes from and stuff like that. And the thing is, I talk about this stuff, like this is just a lot of my own ideas and learnings. I'm not like the biggest reader. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff like that and a lot of self-development books, but I definitely need to be more educated in a lot of stuff, which has stopped me talking out about this stuff in the past. But I feel like if I'm scared to talk about it, then, and we all are scared to talk about it, then when do we ever have these conversations? So I would rather talk about it now and have someone educate me a bit. Like someone said to me the other day, oh, you did a gender reveal, but it would be better to call it a sex reveal. And I was like, thank you. So glad you let me know that. Great.
Yeah. It suits the system, though, if we feel too uncomfortable to talk about it, though, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, and now, and the system has now also created cancel culture so that if you do say something wrong, you're not allowed to say that that's something wrong and evolve and change.
Yeah, the cancel culture that more often than not affects women. Rather than men.
Absolutely. Even just as simple as the Caroline Flack situation versus the Ant and Dec. And I mean, I don't know if we're allowed to mention names, so sue me, anyone. But Ant, i.e. from Ant and Dec, was drunk driving, etc., kept his job. They held it for him. He went back a year later, resolved, had gone into rehab. Caroline Flack lost her job and then got such bad rap for it, ended up in a situation where she took her own life. And I'm sure obviously there's so many other aspects to this, but I just feel like, that's the difference between how a man may get treated in the scenario versus a woman. With, just cancel culture for women. Like I don't hear of many men getting cancelled more as I do women.
No, it's like Ellen DeGeneres has been cancelled basically, hasn't she now? And
why?
Because she's the face of kindness, be kind, and turned out that she perhaps wasn't actually that kind to employees. I don't know the full story, and I've only read about it on the internet, so I can't say for sure. But I think she had to take a little break from her own TV show.
No.
Yeah, but like I say, I don't know. This is all just things that I've read. But I did see someone being like, "Oof, if like kindness is what we're getting cancelled for now, then James Corden's fucked." So like, how come that the what's the word that I'm thinking of? How come it's so different for James Corden and Ellen DeGeneres? How come the levels are so different?
Yeah, and why is it that mistakes can be made, and then absolutely, like, surely you make up for them, if you give you generally give an apology down the line and you build yourself back up. But I feel like, why does that rule not apply the same way for men versus women? And then I'm like, well, who's making the rules, or who's convincing people to do this version of, no, we don't want to know. But then I also think, because a lot of people who do the cancelling are women, As far as I can see. Again, I'm not too deep into it, so if I'm wrong, do tell me. But are women? But it's like we've created this like competition thing, this like
Smurfette syndrome, isn't it?
What is it?
Smurfette syndrome. I always talk about Smurfette syndrome on this podcast because it's how women have been made to compete against each other because there's one Smurfette in the village. And so we think that we've got to compete for that one space rather than going, why is there only one Smurfette?
Let's bring more Smurfettes in.
Let's start our own village.
Yeah. Like that. For me, like that's what I feel that's what we need. Yeah, I want more Smurfettes. I don't want to fight for like the no.
I don't want to live in the stupid Smurf village or those stupid Smurfs. That's not my own village.
Exactly. Yeah, I do. I find it all like the privilege and misogyny and stuff like that. Like, it runs deep. I have a lot of people on Instagram when I mention this stuff to say to me, it doesn't, and that white privilege isn't a thing. Apparently, but I think that's a lot about education. I absolutely a few years ago got into a scenario where I'd be cancelled now, but I basically got pulled up on some stuff, and they were like, I was like, no, color blindness, we're all one, humanity, right? And, I've got a lot of Black friends, and my Black friends were like, no, Danni, we'd have debates about it all the time. And I was so in my own thinking and my own head, and I thought that my way of this, like, we're all one, was better. And I really did not listen to them, which I think is part of this, is with the Black Lives Matter stuff last year, kicking off again and stuff like that. It's like, it's about listening. People with privilege, I have a lot of privilege in the sense I'm very light skinned. So I have this white privilege to a point. That doesn't mean I haven't had microaggressions, etc. And it doesn't mean that I definitely think my brownness has gone against me in the wellness sphere in some regards. But
talk to us about that. Why do you think that?
Because I personally have seen, when I came up and I started my Instagram, there was a massive group of us, and this was when Instagram, it was easy to grow. I haven't grown in a good few years. I've stayed the same numbers, but I've seen people putting out, and this was the same in the acting industry, I'm not saying I'm better at content than other people, but you would see people with less valuable content perhaps, but they're white and blonde and look a particular way and they shoot up, whatever that means. I'm saying this loosely because I do still feel uncomfortable saying it, because I don't want it to take away from somebody's good hard work. That isn't privilege. I'm saying that they haven't had the obstacle of potentially an algorithm not showing. Okay, here's a very simple example. There's another person, Instagrammer, that we all started at the same time. She showed her reach. We had the same amount of followers, but she showed her reach for some of her posts. This was just her giving some background. And I was like, let's say I get 3,000 people reach. Hers was like 150,000 people reach for her post. Now she's white, blonde, and skinny. Are we allowed to say skinny anymore? She's slim. Sorry if that's on PC. She's small. Not dissing her size. She was just small. And I was like, whoa, that's so different. And is our content crazy different? I'm sure, but the difference was a lot. So for me, I think there are barriers. My reach I don't think my face gets pushed out as much. I noticed that when I started putting hashtag curly hair, hashtag mixed race, no word of a lie, it was like I got shadow banned for a good.
I feel the same way when I hashtag LGBTQIA,
Really?
Yeah, I really do. And I think you touched on this the other day, but I think it depends what what you're saying and what time of year it is. I'm
Right.
interested because we're recording now. It's actually lesbian visibility week, I think it is, or lesbian visibility day, but I think we get a full week. I'm on the gays. And I'll be interested to see if you hashtag it this week,
that it would get pushed.
I wonder.
Yeah.
I will have a little experiment and let you know.
Well, I think when I was using that just as the Black Lives Matter stuff happened, it was being pushed and it was great. But it was, maybe 4 to 6 months later. And honestly, like my drop, so I went from like 1,000 people maybe watching my stories to like 200 people.
I've experienced that as well.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, the stories.
So yeah, I think, and this is it, I'm not saying these people didn't work as hard. I'm just saying I don't know if the obstacles were there for them. The colour potentially wasn't. So I do feel that my brownness has affected myself in the wellness sphere on Instagram. Yeah.
And I think I've seen a couple of people biting back recently. I've seen a couple of sarcastic, but I'm not allowed to talk about this because I'm white, cis, male.
Right.
And I've been like, well, that's interesting. You know, the patriarchy has perhaps backfired on this, and we're not happy about it. The same people that love the use of the word snowflake seem to be.
Yeah. And this thing, what makes me laugh is this particular thing, right? You're getting annoyed at because you're being pulled up for having white privilege. And you're throwing the toys out of the pram for people saying that. One, you are mean to call people out on anything you decide is like not what you want to say. So you're allowed to call people out, but no one's allowed to call you out. That is double standards, and I don't like it. But also, and then imagine if you did have a disability, or you were gay, or you were black, or you were fat, and you did have you'd be outraged at the unfairness of it all, surely then. But you having white privilege, that's an outrage. How dare anyone and he misunderstood, this person we're talking about, he misunderstood what white privilege is anyway. His response showed how ignorant he actually is, because he would know that no one was saying, because he kept saying, I've worked hard. Yeah. That's not what anyone's saying. So why don't you go and just maybe read one book? You could even just go and find a little bit of a definition somewhere, and you'd probably, I'm so surprised his friends or his people, his team didn't explain to him. It felt but the amount of response that he had of people that were like, yes, because people are defensive, right? Who, for me, when it all kicked off last year, someone with the George Floyd stuff had happened, and someone messaged me and said, why haven't you said something? You're vocal about a lot of stuff and you haven't said anything. I mean, actually, at the time I was going through a miscarriage and I just was not there to be able to mentally talk about it right away, and that I don't like. Let people find their own voice in their own time. But I also understood that there was a push to talk about stuff. And I just feel like, I don't know. It's like, I get that there's a lot of defense, and I felt defensive. I felt like I'm allowed to chat when I talk about it. But at the same time, this issue for people of color, it's deeper than your little snowflake defense of being told that you've got some unconscious bias, right? When I had to think about that I've got unconscious bias about, stuff and color, when I'm brown myself, that felt devastating. Of course you want to defend your side. Of course, maybe as a white person, you're like, but I'm not the KKK. I'm not racist. But it's
not about
that.
Yeah, it's internalized. We've been conditioned.
Which I'd read this book before this had happened, and it was a great chapter. You mentioned it last week, Glennon Doyle, Untamed, and she has that great chapter and she was talking about racism and body image, and there was a big link for me there as well. But it was interesting about what she said about how she'd been asked to do this talk and to educate people about, you know, Black people and stuff, and then Black people were like, why are you doing the talk? Like, yeah. And I don't know, it's hard to go, oh God, I've got some shit I need to look at and work on. I've just discovered that I've got a lot of shit about men that I need to work on that I didn't think I had, you know. And I'm married to a guy, and it's hard for our marriage because I'm like, oh, I've just realized that I think men are imbeciles. Like, you know, my poor husband's there, like, great.
Thank you.
How do we work through that? But like, you know, that's some shit that we've all got shit. There's all like, and if we think we're that special that we got away with like no internalized like unconscious bias about color and people's size and stuff like that, like, I mean, who do we fight? I'm not Oprah, right? Like,
you're very close though.
I'll take it.
You are my Oprah.
Thanks. I wish.
I would die though.
Like, for me, that I find it mad that like Ellen DeGeneres has like been cancelled. Like, I would, if like Oprah got cancelled or Brené Brown.
Oh, you can't cancel Brené or Oprah. No. Nah, too wise.
Very good mums.
Yeah, I love them. I really think that they should be in charge of the world, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I mean, it'll never happen, but that would be a good world.
Yeah, it really would.
But here we are
being ruled by white rich men.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna go away and write an article on this boy band theory that I've got going on, because I really think that I'm onto something with this. Because I do sometimes think about that, you know, with you saying about Glennon Doyle, about the Black people being like, well, why are you talking about it, Glennon? I do sometimes think about that with men as well. And like you say, it's every time you have these issues that you triggered, you've got to ask yourself, why? What's triggering me? What's this bringing up for me here? Let's do a little deep dive. But I do often think with men, why are you talking about women's health? Or why are you talking about the menstrual cycle? Why are you talking about the menopause? Isn't there somebody that's equally as qualified, or if not more so, who's actually experienced it that we can kind of push to the forefront?
And I do find that odd. Like, recently there's somebody that I know has been talking about menstrual cycle, a male PT, and writing articles and stuff about it. And yet he had asked me about how I coach my clients like differently during menstrual cycle, and I'd give him stuff, and he was like, oh, maybe you could write some stuff. And I was like, yeah, just let me know. And then he was writing the stuff, and I was like, did you just ask me, and have you just taken what I've said and now you're using it? And I do think a lot of the time male PTs, maybe this is a harsh generalization, but there's it's like a claim. It's like, and it gives them something else, and like a tick on their thing of like, I can talk about the menstrual cycle, I know about women, you know, and it's like, but there's women.
It sometimes comes across as a thirst trap.
Yeah. And obviously they're not all doing that, but that does happen in the industry a lot.
Yeah, I do. I was like, there's this one guy that I see talking about, he talks about nothing but the menstrual cycle. And I'm just like, oh, I just feel like if I decided that I was going to be like an erectile dysfunction expert, no one would take me seriously.
Yeah, that's interesting though, right? Because like, I know we're not in America, so we don't have gynaes in the same way, right? But like, would I be like, oh, you're a man, so you don't know? Would I want a woman more?
No, and I think that's the difference as well. It's not that I don't want a male doctor, or I don't think a man can know about it, or I wouldn't take the advice of a male expert in this area. But when they're stood on a podium or Instagram shouting about it, I'm just like, sit down, mate.
Yeah, because you've got the space and the platform to kind of talk about anything you want. So like, why not just give the platform to a woman?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I hear you. And that is a bit like the expo things like we were talking about last week in the live, of just the fact that why aren't women being necessarily asked to like lead a lot of these expos, or be the keynote speaker at a thing, like the women getting a stage for the women to talk about female fat loss.
What do we do then? What should we do? How can we start our village?
So I literally had this thought the other day after we'd had that live. I was like, so is there an expo? And I don't mean like, because you get like you do get female fitness events now, right? So I don't really mean that. But no, hold on, I do. Listen, so we get female fitness events, but they're very much like, so like Lululemon has one and Women's Health have one, and I've been at them with a company of mine a lot, and they're great, but they are still very different to, say, Body Power, which is very
well, even the name, isn't it? Body Power.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel like there's a middle ground again that's not being hit. So is the answer women creating that and going less so down the mainstream? It's just about active wear and cardio.
Menstrual cycle.
And but going, into like some good gritty fitness stuff, with the well-being side attached. I don't know, like, is it about creating our own expo? I'm sure someone has, and I'm sure it's out there. I don't know. I always remember I hated the fact I never got why there was like the MOBO Awards. I remember saying to someone, but I don't get it. Like, why create an awards that means that you're kind of like making it a group of Black people, and then like. And that person said to me, there sometimes has to be segregation where you pull away and you say, I'm not being a part of, let's say, the Brit Awards. I'm not being a part of that. We're going to create our own before there can be the unifying moment.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get that, but I kind of feel a bit like that now. Like, yeah, like as women, do we have to create that village? Then we merge the villages. Yeah. I don't know.
Interesting. It's like it's integration, isn't it? Read about this a bit with feminism, and feminism has to incorporate all. It's got to incorporate people of color. It's got to incorporate queer women. It's got to incorporate trans women. And what happens as humans is we tend to split. We tend to. Like, it's like dichotomous thinking, isn't it? If you're not me, if you're not representative of me, then I'm gonna start this little group. How do we keep things integrated? How do we?
And but then if we're not being asked in to that group, if there's a village and you're here as Smurfette and you're like, but I want to bring all these other Smurfettes in, and the village is like, the leader's like, no.
Then we go, okay, well, we'll just be in our village over here. If you want to come visit our village, then maybe you can fill out an application form and we'll get back to you in 10 business days.
Yeah, let's see how you answer that. Yeah. Because this is the thing, like when we created our studio as a women's only studio, and I have no ways about that. Like, I feel like, like it's needed in the industry. But won't it be great down the line when there's a time that it's not, because women don't feel uncomfortable going into the weight section where there's guys, etc. So I don't know. The integration does have to happen, but I feel I get what that person said to me now. It's like sometimes you have to split off before, and I don't know the like the nitty gritty of that. I'm not smart enough for that.
We don't have all the answers, but we have a lot of questions that I think will help people.
I have so many questions and things, but definitely not the answers. But I mean, who bloody does? Like, and we're all just feeling our way around. And I think social media has highlighted that a lot and fastened it up a bit. And in some ways that's great, and in other ways I think it's scarily dangerous, because of, you know, cancel culture and that aspect of it. But I do think it's good for us to just be asking questions and challenging ourselves and trying to figure this shit out.
Yeah, it's good. It's important. And then same for the people that are reading the posts on social media. Ask questions. Is this person telling you something as writ? Is there any evidence to back it up? Well, then maybe you can get curious.
Absolutely. And I also think, you know, if you are reading something where someone is telling you this is the way it is, my way is the right way, definitely ask questions.
Red flag.
Yeah. Just, would this way suit me? Like, I have that all the time when people, you know, you see it a lot, especially in the fitness industry. And I'm like, that wouldn't suit my lifestyle at all. So no, this isn't the way, you know. And but it takes a lot to get strong in knowing what your way is, and sometimes you have to try it before you know it. So
yeah, for sure. Oh, we've got very deep, haven't we, here, Danni?
Yeah, no, and then I was just having one of those moments, you know, when you're like, I don't know, when you've done podcasts where suddenly you go, have I said anything of interest?
I think about that every time I record, and I'm like, oh, I'll just put it out there and see what happens.
Let's see. Yeah.
Maybe everyone who listens to this, come and let me and Danni know. Come onto our socials and let us know. Did you get anything from it? Has this helped? Does this post any questions? Have you got any answers? Tell us.
Please do.
And also, while you're there, can you please leave us a rating on iTunes, because it really, 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 really helps us spread the message.
Spread the message.
Please, everybody, go and follow Danni. She's very good. She gives out a lot of valuable information, but also dances in her pants a lot, which everybody needs to see, to be honest.
Big pants as well. Yeah, you can find me on Free Fanny, NNI.
At Free Fanny.
Yeah.
We'll put a link to that in the notes as well. And next time I come to London, I'm definitely coming to visit your studio because it looks so cool.
Yes, I'm here now.
Oh, that for the people of YouTube, just got a little glimpse there. Yes. I love it. I love it.
Thanks, love.
Danni, it's been so nice talking to you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. I get to see you on Wednesday, I think, as well.
Yeah, I hope so. We can unpick some of this. We'll ask Amelia. We'll write down all of our questions and we'll ask her what her answers are.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
All right, mate. Thank you.
I'll speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you want to improve your well-being in a non-wanky way, you can join hundreds of other like-minded people in my monthly subscription group for live training sessions, daily workouts, nutrition tips, meditations, and more. Only $10 a month. Email me now, georgina@georginahalltraining.com. Thank you for listening to the Phemale Empowered podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can follow us on Instagram at Phemale Empowered, where you can also get involved with our discussions and feel free to send us a message.